All right, welcome again, Spirituality for Your Mother. I'm hanging out with Debonee Morgan, who is a mentor of mine and teacher who helped me get through 3 wonderful years of spiritual direction certification and just learned so much from Debonee. Debonee is a gifted spiritual director as well as a licensed marriage and family therapist and counselor, and it's just a rad human being, and I think you should know her. So, Deboney, tell us a little bit about yourself and some of your spiritual journey.
Well, thank you. First of all, I have to say that you have also been a great teacher of mine, Beck. And I know many of the people watching are people who've met you in person, since like almost everybody I've ever met has met you in person. But in case they haven't, meet Beck. She's the your energy is educational in and of itself. Just watching you connect with other people in such a organic and authentic way is inspirational, and I aspire to be like you in that way. Um, so my spiritual journey starts with getting baptized in the Baptist church. Um, so, so I got my soul saved, and eventually found my way in high school into theater ministry, Christian theater ministry. So that was the kind of thing with altar calls afterwards, and ministering people in the churches, but also we went into prisons and a lot of youth camps for minors and that sort of thing. So that was really, really fun. And I got to play a rock star for a year and a half. And every female character ever in our Christian version of Christmas Carol. So that was just terrific. And those people became my family. My birth family of origin was a mess and very traumatic. And being amongst my Christian brothers and sisters at that time in my life, high school through college. My son was born on Christmas Eve, and we did, the Christmas show. And so I was on stage pregnant with my son 3 days before he was born, playing Mrs. Cratchit because I was pregnant, and Mrs. Fezziwig because Mrs. Cratchit couldn't be pregnant, or that would not be as tragic when Tiny Tim dies. Yep, spoiler alert. So anyway, that was wonderful. And years later, well, in the meantime, I should say I was going to Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, which was the first mega church and non-denominational. And there's a film, and I wish I could remember the name. Jesus is in the name. Kelsey Grammer plays my former pastor, Chuck Smith. So look that up. Look for Jesus Kelsey Grammer, and you can find the film. It's a wonderful story about the origins of that church. Um, I would not recommend anybody go there now. They've changed a lot since the days of punk rock concerts on Friday night, and supporting, Chuck Smith Jr. Has always supported education on domestic violence, et cetera. But now I believe they're kind of MAGA-y. So then I ended up in grad school. Well, no, I'm trying to think, what do I put in? What do I put out? Okay, I finished my degree. I started at a public university. I finished my degree at an Assemblies of God college, where I had amazing, amazing professors in the religion department. And so, yeah, I've got a degree from a Bible college. But I also had some religious trauma there. I was divorced during the time I was working there, and I was a student there. And as an employee, the head of my department wanted to get me fired because I got divorced. And they thought that meant I was a bad Christian and a poor influence on the students, and just wanted me out of there. Happily, the religion department pushed back against this and let me finish my degree. And then I lost my job because they just eliminated the position. Um, but it did not make me want to, it didn't, let me say this differently. It didn't mess up my belief. It did not change my belief in God. It did change my belief in Christianity as an institution. And the way a particular fundamental patriarchal system can override the message of Jesus. Sometimes you just love Jesus too much to be a Christian, you know? Um, so from there I did end up going to grad school and did my degree that helped me become a psychotherapist. But we had to write a master's thesis back then. I don't know that anybody does that anymore in this field, but I wanted to do it on how the understanding of and connection with the divine feminine is important for women's psychological development. And so there was some research that I could lean into. And so that was what I put forth. They didn't really think anyone would know what the divine feminine was. This was back in the last century. So they kind of watered it down to Christian women's spiritual growth. Um, but still, even once I was out of the Christian school per se, my mind was still there, and it always has been. Um, so yeah, eventually I ended up at the Living School in the inaugural cohort, and so that was my seminary experience. They didn't give us any letters behind our name because Richard said, if you're here for the letters, you're here for the wrong reason. So, sorry, guys, no MDiv here, but a seminary experience that included Richard Rohr, Cynthia Bourgeot, and Jim Finley up close and personal for a year. So that was great. Um, yeah. So that's my journey up until becoming a punk perennialist. And so we can talk more about that in a second. But yeah, that's where I'm coming from is this strong appreciation for the teachings of Jesus and a less strong appreciation for the institutional church. And of course there are exceptions to that. That is not, I'm not being black and white here. There are many good things happening in the Christian church across the board, from Catholicism through all the Protestant ways of looking at that. And also, my daughter, who is almost middle-aged adult, is such a wonderful person, and she attached through a step parent with a witch tradition, more magic and earth-based. And so, several years ago, I started really paying attention to that and learning more about that. So now I would call myself a Celtic Christian because in my own life, I like to practice more of the pagan traditions as well. So I follow the wheel of the year and, have an altar and use various practices from that as well.
I love that. I love that connection that you have with your daughter. And I also love the phrase that you said, punk perennial. So share more about that with us.
Well, that's kind of new, and I've got to give Carl McColman a lot of the credit. Carl and I have started a new project. We will be teaching at the Wild Goose Festival Wisdom Camp with a theme like last year and this year and next year, radical mysticism. And so, we're finding different ways to unpack what that means. Hi, Albert. Oh, I hope you get to meet Albert. He's my shy kitty. He doesn't normally get on camera, but he's up here saying hey. Um, so as we were putting this together and thinking about, okay, what is our brand? Where do we want to go with this? What do we want to teach? What do we want to not teach? Blah, blah, blah. He was really having fun with stuff, and he got a little carried away in the most wonderful way. So he says, we should each have our own little brand. And so he decided, oh, this is Albert, everybody. He decided that he was going to be a feral contemplative, and he came up with this for me, which I love, is punk perennialist. I forgot to mention before, I am ordained as a holy rascal by Rabbi Rami Shapiro, and Rami did not invent the term perennialist. I think Aldous Huxley originally popularized that, but Rami has been very big on repopularizing that. So perennialism would be the ideology that is across faith traditions and permeates faith traditions. It's Richard Rohr says if something is true, it's true everywhere. And so that's what I hang on to when I think about perennialism, something like, you know, do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. That's perennial. You're going to find that in Judaism. You're going to find that in Islam. You're going to find that in Hindu. You're going to find that in Buddhism. It's across the board, right? And for progressive Christianity, not necessarily for fundamentalists, but the idea that uh, like I like the specific way of thinking of it as panentheism, that God is in everything and everything is in God. At the mystical levels across the traditions, you're going to find that to be universal as well. As a matter of fact, let me throw in a pitch real quick for Rabbi Rami Shapiro's book, The World Wisdom Bible. What he does is he takes perennial concepts, and each chapter is a different concept, like God is one, or, the way that we treat others, etc. And then he compiles scripture from all of the different wisdom teachings. And so you're going to find, oh, here's the Hindu take on that. Here's the Sufi take on that. Here's the Christian take on that. So it's a wonderful way of learning perennial ideas that are shared amongst the faith traditions. So, I don't want to pick a team. And then the punk thing came from, uh, hey, Albert, likewise, not wanting to pick a team. Uh, I grew up, I gave you my faith story, but concurrently with my faith story is, yeah, I grew up in Los Angeles and going to clubs in Hollywood and hanging out with bands, and I still do that. I was so excited to see Squeeze the other night. Um, and so I think there's a lot about the punk ethos that can be laid over progressive and deconstructionist spirituality and across perennialism. Ideas like DIY, do it yourself, that's an important part of the punk rock world. And I think it should be an important part of the spiritual world, whichever direction you're coming from, is that your experience should be uniquely your own. You can't just sign off on somebody else's. Well, I mean, you can sign off on somebody else's spirituality, but that's not mature and that's not necessarily authentic, right? Or another punk ethos is, no experience necessary, right? If you want to be in a band, be in a band. If you want to learn about God, go learn about God. You don't have to show up someplace on Sunday or Saturday and or Friday afternoon. You don't have to do that. Now, there's many good reasons that you should. So please, again, don't understand me as being black and white here. I'm not saying that it's bad or wrong or evil. I'm just saying it's not necessary. And so punk perennialism is about finding your own way in the mystical world or in the spiritual world or in the religious world, however, what language meets you where you're at. Um, and, if you can do it with music, do that. For me, music and pop culture has been just as much of an effective place to meet God as church. You know, to me, Kate Bush is just as sacred as anything I ever sang at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa.
Um, yeah, my kid was on this Kate Bush kick during the summer for some reason. I don't.
You're such a good parent.
Yeah, well, I don't even know how she came across it because I think it must have been my husband. Mac must have, yeah, because she was like really into it. I just want to say that Albert's affection is just, I love it. He's being super affectionate. My cat has also joined us, but he's currently staring out the window. So he's like affection schmashmaction.
Well, Albert's brother and sister are even more so than he is. Like I said, Albert's the shy one. So if Gordon or Margaret come up here, we're just going to be overrun. But no complaints, no complaints.
They needed some love. He needed some love.
Always do. We all
Um,
do.
yes, we do. We do. I went to the chiropractor today and got kind of adjusted, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, I feel like chiropractors and like yoga and massage therapists and like somatics, I feel like that should all be part of like healthcare in America. It's like It would just
Yeah.
be if we just care if we could do those kind of things, maybe we wouldn't have sick care, I guess is really what American healthcare kind of is sick care.
Yeah. I heard Andrew Weil speak at uh, in- uh, the biggest psychology convention ever. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, a convention. And so this was several years ago. And that was his whole point. He's like, why are we doctors not focused on wellness? How come we only have a job when you get sick? It's so illogical, but it makes money for some people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I say that, I'm not riffing on doctors. I mean, the insurance companies and all the middlemen that stand between us. But anyway, topic for another day.
Yeah. I mean, you're so on point. Um, just a segue into kind of healing and wholeness and everything. You mentioned you're going to be doing some radical mysticism and wisdom at the Wisdom Camp at Goose. What other offerings are you available for the public in your work as a spiritual director and other things?
Well, what I would like to start doing is more retreat reading, retreat leading, etc. So I'll just put that out there. But I am a spiritual director, and so that means I meet one-on-one with people, usually once a month. And I do that in the framework, speaking about, software and whatnot, as my psychotherapy practice. So the way, if anyone were interested in doing that, is just go to debonee.com, DEB like boy, ONEE.com. And on my there's a book and appointment page, and I say on there explicitly, I'm not taking new psychotherapy clients because my caseload is always full and I already have a waiting list. But you can always schedule a spiritual direction appointment. Since that's just 1 hour a month, I'll squeeze you in. We'll figure it out. Um, yeah. And you and I'm sure you've already spoken about spiritual direction on here, or if not, we can kind of describe that. But um,
I think
yeah.
it would be good just to give our listeners. I mean, I think some of them may be familiar, but not everybody. And I haven't. And I've talked a little bit with Mitch on here about spiritual direction, and then Ashley Gunthus, who's a, oops, I just messed up Ashley's name and it's not Gunthus. Scratch that. It's Ashley Tillelly, who's a spiritual companion. So we
Mhm.
talked a little bit about that, but I would love for you to kind of share. A lot of people don't understand the difference between like therapy and spiritual direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And because I'm a therapist, I almost always describe spiritual direction in relationship to that. So I say it's kind of like therapy, except we only meet once a month instead of weekly because spiritual time works differently. And spiritual time needs rest and breath and attention, maybe more so than psychological stuff. And we focus strictly on your spiritual life. Now, in actuality, other things affect your spiritual life. When I talk to my spiritual director, we talk about interpersonal relationships. We talk about how's work going, but it's different because it all threads into, and how is that affecting your spiritual life, or how is your spiritual life affecting that, right? And so the focus is on your spiritual life. Therapy, as a good therapist, you want to focus on measurable differences. You want to focus on behavioral change, or an inner shift toward understanding or maturity, whatever. And we apply specific interventions and specific tools. And, theoretically, you should be able to measure growth from year to year, or whatever that how long however long that relationship lasts. I'm psychodynamic in orientation, so I've had many of my clients for years, and some therapists would think that was appalling, but let's talk psychodynamic theory. But for spiritual direction, we don't really apply interventions. It's just companionship. It's just, let me be here with you. We create a safe container. And, sometimes when things are well, you might not think of going to see a spiritual director then. But when the doo-doo hits the fan, um, That is definitely the time. And that's how I met my spiritual director. I mentioned before the losing my job at the Christian college. My spiritual director is the wife of one of the professors that stood by me during that event. And years later, I was in crisis. Uh, and I knew that, I mean, I'm a therapist. I knew, oh, I should go see a therapist. I didn't need to see a therapist. I knew the problem was spiritual. I knew it was not psychological. And now I know it was a dark night of the soul. I didn't have that language or that construct at the time. And I wasn't attending church. So I was like, where do I go? I need a spiritual elder. I need a mentor. And I went to Jerry, my Old Testament teacher, one of my favorite teachers when I was in my undergrad. And I said, Jerry, you got to help me out. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know. And he said, well, my wife happens to be a spiritual director. And so, she and I have been together for well over 20 years now. And, she's very precious to me. Um, but anyway, a crisis is a great time to reach out. The first hour that I did with her as my spiritual director, I just cried. I don't even think I talked. I just cried. And she just sat there and sat with me and didn't fix me and didn't change me and didn't shake a Bible at me. She just sat with me. And sometimes that's what you need is somebody to just sit with you.
I'm glad she didn't shake a Bible at you.
She did not. She would not because she's great.
I have some more questions for you, but you brought up something and it made me think for people who don't really understand Dark Night of the Soul, or maybe for those who get kind of confused with um like major depression, what would you say the difference is between those two things?
Mm, yeah. Well, first of all, they can happen concurrently. So I do want to say that you might be depressed and going through a dark night. And that was indeed the case for me. My depression was to the point of suicidal ideation. But so the difference would be, and this can be really hard to suss out, which is why it's good to talk to a spiritual director. Um, how do I articulate this? What they share in common is low energy, a sense of you're not really able to move through life. It's like walking through jello. That's the same with depression or with the dark night frequently. A sense of meaninglessness is sort of shared, like what does this matter? What the heck? Who cares? Kind of thing. That can be depression or that can be a dark night. But as you hopefully you have a good companion, a good therapist or a good spiritual director or a good friend or good clergy, somebody to have this conversation with, as you start untangling the necklace and sussing it out, the distinction is that the dark night has to do with losing all of the foundations that you thought you had for your spirituality. And that's beyond depression. It's losing your touchstones or your hallmarks. Your prayer life just becomes empty or dry, right? Your the songs you used to like to sing, you don't necessarily want to sing, but you're kind of wondering. In my case, what I said to my spiritual director when I first went is either God doesn't exist and I've just been making up a pretty story for myself all along, or God exists and he hates me. And so my ideology was very religious or theological rather. Um, it's a sense of abandonment with the Dark Knight. It's a sense of absolutely being lost and nothing works anymore. And so that, like I said, some people might think, well, I guess God just doesn't even exist because if she did, she wouldn't be doing this to me. So there's a hopelessness which is shared with depression, but it's a hopelessness that tears you away from your faith. Because you can be a person of faith and also depressed, um, and you'll know because it hasn't affected your faith. You're still happy to pray and say, "Oh God, take this depression away from me," or whatever. But with the dark night is you're disconnected from God.
Thanks for kind of teasing that out a little bit. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And as you were speaking and you were talking about untying the necklace, I thought about, and it reminded me when you were kind of connecting to the divine feminine, which I know that was your kind of thesis and in your master's work. But I was just thinking about Mary being the untier of knots, and it's
Mm.
very interesting in her cosmology. Oh, apparently there's a bird outside the window that the cat has just discovered and knocked over some stuff. Though I hear that all night long. It's like, oh, the cat found something. That's exciting. I'll go pick up whatever just broke later. Um, let's see. We've talked a little bit about your spiritual journey. We talked about some stuff that you're doing. We're talking about people, how they can connect with you. Oh, let's dive deep. If you're willing, tell us about some lessons that you've been incorporating, maybe hard lessons, life lessons, things that you've been learning. I will just jump in and say that I thought I was done with people pleasing, but I've had seven major conflicts in the past 2 weeks, and it's come back up again. And it's like when situations are complex, I have the propensity to neglect myself and to dive into caring for others. And I was like, this is something that I get to go back into therapy with, and this is something that comes back up again. And so my life lesson in this past few weeks has been like, I have to save myself, and that means that sometimes I might be the bad guy in someone else's story, and it's okay for me to be the villain in someone else's story to make sure that I'm meeting my basic needs. So yeah, it's just like it's so hard when things are complex and everything, but that's really been the lessons I'm learning. And then my other weird lesson I've been learning, I'm in kind of a middle state, a transitional state. And the other day I was walking out and there was a caterpillar on the concrete, and I looked at it and I almost stepped on it, but I bent over and I picked it up and I moved it to some foliage. It's been kind of dry, but at least it'd have something green to be on. And I kind of felt in my spirit, like in the way that I communicate with God, kind of felt like God was, or my higher self, universe, whatever you want to say. I felt like God in that moment was like, you're in the caterpillar stage and just hold on because the butterfly's coming. But, this is me, God, kind of moving you to some foliage for just a minute to keep you from getting too dried out or stepped on. And I was like, oh, okay, I get this. So those have been kind of like my lessons and some little snippets I'm holding on to in this kind of eclipsy, uneven, weird, wobbly stage that I'm in of life right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so lessons. And while you were talking, I thought of another one and now it's gone right out of my head. Um, Shoot. It wasn't okay. Anyway, the one that was already in my head is I guess my core wounding based on childhood trauma is a sense of not being chosen, not being centered by anybody. And I've been divorced now from my second husband. I hate that I have to number them now. About 4 years. And uh the the pain of that was believing that I had been chosen because somebody said so out loud in front of God and an assembly of people, when in fact I had not. Um, so figuring out how to, let me say that differently. Figuring out makes it sound like it's my effort. It's more about awareness and no effort. It's about accepting and being with what's already there, which is being chosen by the universe, being chosen by God. Um, and sometimes that's hard, right? Because we're spiritual beings, but we're having a human experience. And so you would, we all want that as humans. We want that. And that's of course healthy and natural. Um, but to have to uh, rely on our personal relationship with the divine and to be completely immersed in that to the point of, and this then gets into the mystical thing of union with God, right? So I kind of bounce around from earthly experience to spiritual experience, back to earthly experience, and kind of ping-ponging with that. Oh, here was the second point when you were talking about being the villain in somebody else's story, right? Is with our organization Zeitgeist, I've put so much effort into that because I believe in the mission. I believe in what we do. I want to see this continue. And also at the same time, when this opportunity with Carl called, it felt very selfish. It felt very much like, no, but you owe it, you owe everything to this, to Zeitgeist. Um, but what I'm learning from my experiences, it's okay to seek something that is beneficial for me, even if it's not directly beneficial to everybody else. And that's not my first instinct, right? And so, like yourself, you have to be willing to um, have other people be upset with you in order to do what the Holy Spirit or guides or whatever language you want to use, your better angels uh, are leading you towards. So those are my two lessons is to try to be as much of a loving person as I can. Hey, Marley. And
Say
and
hi.
okay.
There's a squirrel outside our window that the cat is now playing with. So now the whole house wants to be part of the podcast, and the squirrel, a neighborhood squirrel.
Yep, a squirrel. Yay, squirrels are fun.
Um, say bye, Marley.
Bye.
I'm so I'm so thankful for the time that you had with Zeitgeist, and for me, I'm ex really excited about this new opportunity that you have with Carl and the things that are coming out of it. And I feel like, um, Zeitgeist had to have a death and able to move into the next thing of what it is because I feel like it goes with you, like whatever that looks like, right? So, and for me, I'm just so grateful because I get to be kind of a product of that, and then community with an amazing human
Yeah.
like yourself.
And we've got ideas about how to grow it, in a different way, in a different direction, that, relies on efforts beyond myself. And so it's not gone. It's like your caterpillar. It's in a
Caterpillar.
transitional process. And, we're trusting that the universe is gonna have things shake out the way they should. So
Yeah. There's something to be said about the caterpillar process. So
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah. Debonee, okay, I have two more questions for you. And one I didn't ask you earlier, but tell me about a place that you found God that you
Mhm.
were told not to look.
Oh. Well, okay, so the first thing that comes to mind, I don't know if this is the best thing, but it's the first thing that comes to mind is I've always been struck by Thomas Merton's Fourth and Walnut moment of, just seeing this glowing presence of God in every person walking along the street. And that's just so cool because it removes God from the places where we would normally look, right? And like I said, I'm still very involved with music and pop culture and all of that. And one of my favorite places in Atlanta is the Star Bar. You can hear some good live music there. The drinks are strong, so just know that before you go. Um, and it's just the kind of a dive bar with great people and great music, and it's one of my favorite places to hang out. And so it distinctly happened to me once, but it kind of happens to me subtly every time, and that is just looking around and just seeing God and all of these people just enjoying music on a Friday night and talking to friends. And, I don't know that a lot of people would go look in a dive bar, but for me, I almost always experience God's presence in that kind of environment where people are relaxed and connecting with one another. And then back to the punk thing too, is I was talking with a friend and I was very excited. She was the first person that I told about, punk perennialist. That's me. That's gonna be my thing, and we're gonna talk about this. And she was visibly I'm gonna exaggerate for the sake of telling a story, but she wasn't actually horrified, but I'm gonna say she was horrified. And she's like, you can't do that. Like, you don't want to be associated with that. And this was a friend of mine who's a little bit older and doesn't have experience in this community, right? But for me, God is just as much in a mosh pit as in the pew, right? Because people are experiencing something energetic there. They're doing something that is constructive for them in whatever way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's I'm not saying this based on research right now. I'm just beginning to sort of continue to dive into this more academically rather than just my personal experience. But I think most people on the scene would agree that the kind of people that are drawn to the energy of the punk ethos, I think there's a strong connection with trauma. And if you watch a great documentary on the early punk scene in Los Angeles called The Decline of Western Civilization, just interview punk kids from the scene at the end of the film, and every single one of them brings up trauma. I mean, organically, it's not
Yeah.
like, hey, kids, tell me about trauma. They're just like, hey, who are you and what's your story? And everybody's story is just, and they're telling it very matter of factly, like, oh, yeah, well, this happened and this happened, but everything they're describing is pretty severe trauma. So where there's healing, there's God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even where there's hurting, there's God.
Yeah.
Um, you know.
I love that you said that God was could be in a mosh pit, and God was also in the pew. I thought that was beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
And then I forgot what else you said. You said finding God in a dive bar. That sounds like a great uh title for your next book endeavor. So
Well,
yeah.
when I get around to it in my free time, ha ha ha. The book I'm writing in my head is The Church of Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
And I was just spending the weekend with a musician friend of mine and kind of talking this through. And Gary Lauderman over at Emory is wonderful at connecting pop culture and religion. He's brilliant in that regard. And so I'm talking to him about it as well. Um, but just this idea that the world of rock and roll music, and I'm talking broad here. So that includes punk, that includes, power pop, whatever. Um, it has the same thing the church has.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
has ritual. It has liturgy.
Yeah.
It has, hymns, obviously. It has a place. It has a sacred sanctuary, right? And
Yeah.
then we go there to partake. And what gave me the idea for the book in the first place was thinking back to Trump's first election. I hate using this word Trump and election in the same sentence, but um, so that happened, we voted on Tuesday. It was finalized, whatever, middle of the night. And so that Wednesday, the following day, first of all, it was the worst day I've ever had as a therapist, because my client base tends to be queer. I had immigrant people there. I had people of color. It was a terrible, terrible day. And Wednesday night, I went and saw Guided by Voices at the Variety Theater here in Atlanta. And it just dawned on me, like, this is church. Like, people need this right now. People
Mm,
need to be in a room listening to music, standing on the floor, variety, you can
Yeah.
change it up. And I'm like, this is salve.
Yeah.
And that's when it dawned on me, it's like, wait a minute, everything about rock and roll is the same as church.
Yeah. 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 Really is. Truly
Even the
is.
stories, the mythos, the narrative, right?
Yeah.
You know the rock and roll stories,
Yeah.
you know? So that'll be my book, unless somebody steals it after listening to this.
Nah.
We'll go beat them up.
Don't steal the ideas, people. Come up with your own. I was just thinking about how ugly AI flyers are, and like we have got we cannot be lazy. We have to like give into our creativity. It's just like I think we're co-creators with God. I think we're joint heirs with Jesus and given that creative healing abilities. And I'm just like, man, let's just unleash our creativity and not use AI for that. Like if we're going to use AI, let's use it for some constructive things like please fix this cell in this in this Excel sheet. Like not not for creative stuff. Um okay, Debney, this has been really rad. I would love for last words, a blessing, practical wisdom, anything you have for the audience today.
Mm. That's such a great question. I want to live up to the gravity of your question. Hmm. I guess my blessing for people would be my wish is for you to be okay with not being okay and to recognize that you don't need to go find anything to bring unto you. That just sit still and recognize that everything you need is already there. It's just a matter of what can you take off or what can you take away in order to let that shine and let that be true in you. That's my blessing for your folks.
Thank you for that. I am reminded by the great theologians who once sang, all I ever needed, all I ever wanted was here in my arms.
There you go.
So, a little Depeche Mode for us all today. Deboney, what a treat
Yay.
this has been. So excited. You guys can find her again. It's debonee.com, Debonee.com. We'll make sure that's in TypeScript so you'll be able to find it to get
Yay.
on her spiritual direction or to connect with retreats and to find out more about what she's doing in the world. Thanks, Deboney.
Thank you, Beck.
All right, we have stopped recording and it's